So, I know everyone's giving their 2 cents on this thing, and even some who definitely shouldn't.
What the fuck? And before you start with me, yeah, it has to do with her race.
You can go from white to black, but if you go from black to white, all hell breaks loose. All I'm saying is, keep the same energy. If they come out with a Black Panther that's white, keep the same energy.
Hollywood made it an issue with their diversity initiatives, which were exclusionary, and Gingerside's real.
But I thought I'd chime in because, well, I'm one of billions of other people on this app hoping to make talking about pop culture a career with a livable wage.
You serious?
And more importantly, I'm black. I've lived through these kinds of conversations about recasting and race swaps more times than I can even count, and every single time it's the most annoying and frustrating thing and makes me want to pull the hair that I don't have out of my head. It's gotten to the point now where my anger over the opinions of others, even those of people in my race, about this stuff has dulled from anger into a very low and numbing simmer. Because between you, me, and the screen, this shit is just so tiring.
Oh shit, here we go again.
I acknowledge that these movie studios don't care about me, my race, or the people within it, or other people, their race, or the people within it. I'm aware that the act of casting a person of color to play a character who wasn't that in the original work is in some cases more stunt casting than actual representation. It's a tactic to build hype, get people talking online, and of course, get butts in seats, which in turn gets them money. So, for what I hope will be the last time, but let's be honest, we all know it won't, I'm going to say this as clearly as I can for anyone who still doesn't get it. If you are someone who has a problem with stuff like this, or this, or this, or this, and love to go on social media complaining about the loss of culture or historical accuracy, but nowhere can anyone find you talking about this, or this, or this, or this, I'm sorry to say it, you might just be racist. I don't throw around that term willy-nilly, and I know I might turn some people off to seeing any of my stuff in the future by hearing this, but god damn it, man, I'm really just so tired of having the same conversation, the same discourse every single fucking time. I always said I wanted this channel to be an open conversation between me and whoever's watching my videos. Seriously, anyone who is, thank you so much. It means everything. So I hope you understand why I'm having this conversation and why this is a conversation we have to have. Because if people don't understand why being okay with this and not this means something, then we'll never get to a place where people stop having the same dumbass takes online. The problem with reactions to castings like this is that it turns people into cultural anthropologists, as was the case when Assassins... I said Creed Shadows had a trailer featuring the black samurai Yasuke and the casting of the live-action Little Mermaid before it. Those adamantly against the recast and character inclusion took to social media to intellectualize their bigotry. I mean, share their knowledge. Bigotry of history to say those characters don't make sense and we shouldn't be seeing them or they shouldn't look like that.
Yasuke is what they want to say is the first black Japanese samurai, when in all actuality, he was not even a samurai. He was a retainer, so he wasn't even a full-blown samurai.
Because this is a story about Vikings. Look at the real Astrid. Blonde hair, blue eyes.
Again, it's very interesting those same people remained so quiet when Moses was played by Batman or the Egyptian god Set was played by... Hey, you know, he's in How to Train Your Dragon. Now that's what I call synergy. The problem with this particular response is the people that claim to fight for historical accuracy aren't themselves accurate with their history. They Googled once, were there black samurais, or what culture was the Little Mermaid story based on, or were there black Vikings, saw the result that pretty much just said no blacks allowed and said, vindication! Now I can be racist with impunity. When the truth of it is, yes, Yasuke was real, observed by real Japanese people. The culture of the Little Mermaid had no bearing on the actual story, and Vikings were not a race. They were a culture, a fact I discovered while doing some research backed by other, much smarter people than myself.
Trade routes extended from Canada to Afghanistan, making the Vikings more diverse than previously thought. This intermingling with people from the south and the east diversified their genetic makeup and led to a variety of physical appearances.
You couldn't really say there was a homogeneous group that was very, just the Scandinavian people that looked the same everywhere genetically. There was actually quite a lot of diversity.
Generally speaking, think of these people as quite tall, and normally, as in Scandinavia today, a lot of people who are blonde and have blue eyes. We have, however, recently discovered through ancient DNA studies that quite a few of them actually had much darker hair. So lots of people with brown hair, even some people with brown eyes.
It's very clear that the animated kids film Where They Ride Dragons weren't themselves interested in depicting the culture in such direct and extensive detail. It's inspired by the culture, but not beholden to it. Like most depictions of Vikings in Hollywood films, it's never been about accuracy.
Things that aren't quite right, or that go a little bit too far. One of those is the portrayal of women and female warriors. Now, this is something that's caused quite big debates, because certainly in the Vikings show, we have plenty of female warriors. In fact, entire armies made entirely just of women. We do have records of what we call shield maidens, so they're these sort of fighting women, but they're usually thought to be mythical. We have female goddesses like Freya, for example, the goddess of warfare.
So cut that shit out. Another popular defense, the old reliable, but what if we got a white T'Challa? I bet you guys will flip over that. Suck it, liberals.
Up yours, woke moralists.
I don't have time to get into an extensive diatribe about how that statement is so very wrong on so many levels. Don't have time to explain the cultural context of POC roles in fiction, how those same actors were treated in the studio system, blackface, yellowface, etc., because we'll be here all goddamn day. But what I will say is the obvious. Simply put, the reason why you cannot have a white T'Challa is because even the white writer who created him did so with the sole purpose of making him black. It's well known that Jack Kirby, co-creator of the character along with Stan Lee, did so because he saw the lack of black characters in comics as well as the black audiences who read them. I came up with Black Panther because I realized I had no blacks in my strip. I'd never drawn a black. I needed a black. I suddenly discovered that I had a lot of black readers. My first friend was a black, and here I was ignoring him because I was associating with everybody else. Yeah, I won't lie. A black, the blacks, that kind of threw me there. He was just saying it so casually. This isn't from like the 60s or the 70s. This is from an interview in 1990. That's wild. Nevertheless, the character's creation sought to fill a void that was empty for most of the history of comics at that time. In creating the Black Panther, Lee and Kirby, though like most characters in Marvel, probably mostly Kirby, created a character to subvert the tropes of African-American comic characters and African-American people in the real world. Later stories would develop his character and his world, making him a king of a nation that was untouched by European colonialism. That's why Wakanda is special. Yeah, there's white people in Africa, but there's none in Wakanda. There's a reason for that. That's what the writers intended. All of that is why you can't just palette swap T'Challa like you could a white character. His race is baked into every facet of his character. From his story to his creation, T'Challa needs to be black. Most white characters weren't created with that level of intentionality. They were made white because that was just the default at the time. I don't have to tell you what that time was. We know what that time was. There are a few white characters that need to be white, but that number is small and limited by the story being told, which is ultimately the point. Because what these racists, and yes, they are in fact racists, keep forgetting is that above all else, story is the thing that matters. All the raging and whataboutisms in the world won't change that fact. Black characters are made that way because of the intentionality. There's a reason baked into the story for them to be that race. This whole race swap thing is stupid because people are fighting over a change to a story where the character's race play absolutely no role in the plot whatsoever. We can talk all day about how this is fiction, it's fantasy, there's dragons, but at the end of the day, that's the real point. There is no scene in the original story or the original movies where the character, played by a Hispanic woman, makes a comment about her race or the race of any other character in the film. That's not the point of the movie. Yes, they are Vikings, and yes, Vikings have traditionally been depicted in media as white. That's not due to any universally accepted cultural purity or historical accuracy. That's just Hollywood doing what they've always done when it came to depicting parts of history for film, keeping anyone not white out of the center frame. That is, of course, unless the film shows people of color struggling or in pain. That's the thing that gets Oscars, don't you know? The movies themselves care absolutely fuck all about the skin color, and I can already hear you now.
If it doesn't matter, why do it?
That's why. That is the answer. I have always hated that question because that's the answer. Because it doesn't matter. Because there doesn't need to be a reason why a character is or isn't a certain race unless the reason is tied to the narrative at play, which for most white characters is almost never a concern. You know, it's actually funny. They never seem to ask the same question of straight white male characters, do they? Curious. So, for the final time, if you still think there is a problem with white characters being turned into people of color, stop with the bullshit, stop with the doublespeak, just come out and say you're racist. Say you don't like seeing white roles taken by people of color. Say you don't like male roles being taken by women. Say you don't like straight roles being taken by queer people. Say all of that and skip the cultural purity or historical accuracy or reverse racism or any of that nonsense. Skip all of it and admit that it is nothing more than a smokescreen to hide the ever-present and ever-sinister bigotry that you've always had inside of you. Oh, just a second here. Hello? Yes, this is he. Wait, what? What do you mean the character of Astrid wasn't even in the original story the movies were based on? Are you fucking kidding?